Right, Doug Levi, Strategic Insurance, late on a Friday, doing a little flood quoting and a little flood project for some realtors. So I want to shoot this for a few reasons. One, flood insurance has changed quite a bit. Flood insurance has undergone its biggest changes in the last 50 years with Flood 2.0. And basically, if you're unfamiliar, Flood 2.0 is the National Flood Insurance Program, which is run through the government, the changes that they've made. These are the most significant changes they've made in quite some time in terms of their underwriting, pricing, and a handful of other things. So we're just going to do an example here in the system. It's going to look very similar. We're going to go into Right Flood, who we do most of our flood insurance with. If you're part of our team, you'd log in through RoboForm. And if not, and you're an insurance person, you should think about becoming part of our team. You can always check out insurancesideHustling.com for that. Once you're in, you can go New Quote, and a lot of this is going to look similar. You go Flood, okay? And probably the biggest change to mention is that previously, flood insurance in Florida, we're speaking, it can vary depending on where you live, but these are also some big picture guidelines. Traditionally, if I've got a home that's built after 1974, and I'm in a flood zone, I would need something called a flood elevation certificate. A flood elevation certificate would look something like this, and it's going to have a bunch of data on it. The biggest things that it's really going to look at are the base flood, and we've done other videos on this, but the base flood says, hey, where I live, the lowest you should have my home built is 11 feet. Hence base flood 11 feet. That's what this is saying here. Then we compare that with what's known as the top of the bottom floor, which is in essence where my home sits in that zone, right? So in this scenario, and this happens to be one that's, by Madeira Beach, and you see this a lot, older homes by the beach in Florida were built below what flood levels they should be, so they're at much higher risk. It's a very basic concept in terms of what's my base flood? Am I above it? If I'm above it, I'm going to be doing pretty well. If I'm below it, I'm likely going to be paying more because I'm higher risk. With Flood 2.0, you don't need an elevation certificate anymore. Now, an elevation certificate may help you, but it's not required. Okay? So really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and I'm going to start plugging in this info here. Okay, and this we don't have a ton of info. I'm just going to put my info in, and this is kind of like an example of what we're doing and for our flood project here. I'm going to put in the street address. Okay, I'm going to pull this over from property appraiser. I'll cut and paste this. Putting in city. Putting in zip code. Click next. Okay. Say yes. Do we want a flood zone determination? I always say yes to this. Multiple structures, no. Tell me to email me when they get the flood zone determination back. The flood zone determination is normally going to come back and say yes, you're in a flood zone, or no, you're not. Now we know this is in a flood zone. It is in a flood zone based on the distance to the water because it's coastal. Let's see what comes next here. The system must be a little tired on a Friday afternoon. Okay, so now I'll put up some info. You can see it showing the flood zone AE. Well, this is showing base flood 10. Keep in mind with Flood 2.0, they have remapped some of these things. So the flood elevation certificate we had on file showed base flood of 11, but this was also done in 2017. So some of these zones and maps and things like that have changed. Okay. So now we're going to say, really, and what I also want to highlight with this is I want to highlight and see if there's any difference by still using the flood elevation certificate. So with that being said, we're going to look here, just answering questions. It's residential, single family. Most of this is what I would get from I would get from property appraiser. I wasn't quite sure. It's actually a 2 to 4 family. It looks like it's a duplex. Based on what I'm seeing here, there's 2 living units. So it's not under construction, it's walled and roofed, it's not on water, over the water, occupied 80% of the time. It's not part of a condo association. It already pulled through the original date built. Not being used as a rental. Okay, most of these are going to be no. Okay. We're going to say foundation type. Now, foundation type normally would tell you based on property appraiser. So here you can even see foundation type slab on grade. Okay. Or you could look up the home up online. You can take a look at Google Maps. Okay. 2 units here, no elevator, no machinery. Now it's going to ask, do we have an elevation certificate? Now, if you notice here, it says elevation certificate not required for 2.0. However, it may result in a lower premium than if you don't have one. You can get a list of surveys here. I'm going to say no for now. Okay. In terms of the building coverage, just for purposes of this, I'm going to use $150 per square foot. Just as sort of a round number, so I'm going to say 150. So that's going to put right around 200,000 in content in terms of coverage. Click next. And then, let's see here. It's thinking. Okay. And now we can see it's giving me some options, right? So 2, 5, 10,000. You see the pricing here. So we'll just say, okay, if we do it, $5,000 deductible, we can print this, save it as a PDF, save it in here, and put this is okay. And I'm going to put no UC. Now I am going to go back because I am kind of curious. Okay, I'm going to go back. Actually, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm sorry, I should click next first, really. The next page after that sort of summary page is going to give me a little bit more color, and it's going to give me the formal proposal, more formal proposal, right? It's also going to say, hey, here's if we did our private options. You can see the private options are more expensive. Okay. Now if I go to documents, I can print this. Now I'm going to get a more formal looking proposal, right? Okay. And you still see it gives the very bottom other options. So we'll save that, which is really the more professional one if we're doing anything. So I'll resave that. Okay. Now I am going to go back here, and like I said, I'm going to do one other thing. Okay. I'm going to click copy. I'm going to say yes, I want to copy the quote. Now what I'm going to do, most of this stuff should be saved. Well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to do copy. I'm going to go back in instead of the copy. What I'm trying to do is go back and find the elevation certificate and that option and seeing if I add the certificate in, does it do anything for me? Does it help the client in any way? Okay, so I'm going to go back in the original one, and I'm going to edit the quote, okay, as opposed to making the copy. I'll say, yes, I do have the elevation certificate. Now I'm going to go back in, pull up the elevation certificate. So it's asking for the date. We looked at that a minute ago, and we said it was 10/20/17. Diagram number. The diagram number is just on the flood elevation certificate. It's normally going to tell you what diagram it is, whether it's 1, 2, 3, something like that. So this happens to be diagram 1. So we'll go ahead and put that. Okay, and then we're going to say yes, photos have been taken, and yes, it was completed. It's going to ask here some of these NAVD and NGVD are kind of like back-end flood datum, and really all you have to do is pull it from the certificate. Okay, so here I'm just looking and it says NAVD, so I'm going to choose NAVD. Top of the bottom floor, so we had talked about that earlier and said, hey, what's the top of the bottom floor? 5.50. Top of the next highest floor, and it even kind of shows you, what sections these are. I'm going to put 0 if there's nothing there. Actually, I'm going to leave it blank until actually I've got something I can put in. The system may stop me and tell me that I need to put something in. We'll see here in a minute, but these are the actual columns that were filled in. I'll click next. We'll see if that goes through. And I think this is one where clearly, because the home is below base flood, I can't imagine that the certificate's going to help. Just want to confirm that, and it's not. And really what the system will do is it will pull whatever the best rate is. So that is how you run a quote in Flood 2.0 with and without the flood elevation certificate. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a great day.